Hey folks, it's Ben back with you in the Midwest Model Shop. Alright, so in today's episode of the Duchess of Kingston, we're going to go ahead and begin assembly. Well, we're going to assemble all three of our masts, the foremast, mainmast, and mizzen mast. I feel like this is a little bit of a disjointed episode in the way that I do this. There's only a handful of pieces involved in putting the mast together, and I'm going to try in the video to show you that while looking at the plans, and then we just kind of skip along into like the main pertinent points versus this is how you assemble things. Except for the end at the mizzen mast, I explain how to put the 2 or 3 pieces of wood together. I shape these masts on my lathe that I have out in a different shop. I'm not going to cover that because I've done some filming of that before in other episodes, and I don't feel like it's helpful to those of you who do not have a lathe or access to a lathe. You don't need a lathe to do this. So it's kind of like if you have this tool, it's fantastic and super helpful, and I strongly recommend you use it. But if you don't, then if you go online and you look around YouTube, it'll show you other ways to do this. You could just go ahead and use a file or your hobby knife and carve the mast to shape. You can also take a drill, chuck up the masts in a drill and just spin them, and it'll wear your battery down eventually. And this takes a while, but you could spin it and use some sandpaper and or a file to get the shape that you want. I'm not going to cover doing that because, like I said, I use my lathe. So that's how we arrived at the shapes that we have here to put everything together. Everything else is kind of just a bunch of, I ran into this, you could do that, I screwed this up, this is how I fixed it. Type of things. If you're careful, you won't screw it up like I did, and that's pretty much it. So in the end, though, you'll see the masts. They're up, and we'll be ready to move on kind of to their final stage of prep in the next episode. That's really what this is all about. Thank you everyone on Patreon who supports us. We really do appreciate it. I hope you've enjoyed this series, and I'm always thinking about and working towards providing more content in Patreon for you guys specifically, if not at a minimum, just to show you the videos ahead of time. Thank you to everyone who's watching out here on regular YouTube land. I appreciate it, and thank you for everyone who's gone to our website, themidwestmileshop.com, and made a purchase. We really do appreciate it. Nora and I work hard to try and provide you guys with high quality, useful products that will save you time and make modeling more enjoyable. I mean, that's what this is all about, is having a good time. So, and that's why I'm building the Duchess of Kingston. I really like building wood ships. This has been a very rewarding build and brought a lot of joy and happiness to me here at the bench. So that's why we're doing it. All right, that's enough talk. Let's get into the build. Well, hello folks on YouTube. We're back at it. So on our amazing build of the Duchess of Kingston, we've moved along to this point, page 64 in the instructions, where we're going to go ahead and start assembling the mizzen top, gunnels, and everything for the fore mainmast and mizzen mast. These are the mizzen top platforms. So it's what you see here. It's a 2-piece affair. And I went ahead and accomplished that, and it turned out exactly like the picture. I didn't videotape any of it because it's 2 pieces. But I will share something. I was reticent to share this suggestion. So, except for the smallest one, these 2 broke on me. You can't tell because they went together fine. What broke? This little piece up here. When you go to cut it out, it's very fragile. It's a 1mm piece of wood, and it's just the nature of the beast. So when you do this, please be very careful. You're kind of used to the ship being really robust by now. Everything holds up nice and strong, and then suddenly you're introduced to this very fragile piece. One of the things you could do, I'm reticent to share this suggestion because it could go sideways on you. But if your piece of wood is absolutely dead flat, and it is a little dry, and you're concerned about it, so you're going to be cutting it out in a thin piece like this, what you could do is float some thin CA glue over the top of this and just let it sink in and absorb in. Now, a warning, if you do that, there's no staining this again. We're not staining these pieces in the build. We're going to be painting them black, which is why you could get away with that. And if you do that, it will reinforce the wood and make it stronger. I opted not to do that, and I just had to be really careful, and it broke like here, and a couple of these little things came off on me. And this one broke in half like at the top and over here on me, and it was no big deal though to just carefully glue that back into place. That's kind of my comments there about that. All right, so once that's done, we get to flip the page in the instructions though. And you end up over here, page 65, and you're going to put together the trestle tree, cross tree, and bolsters and spacers. And this is going to be the underside of your platforms. And they tell you to put them together like here. They also tell you to dig out your plans. Make sure you get the plans that they tell you. You need one for each page to instruct you with specifically where these parts are going to go when you put it all together, because it's not covered here. This is the end goal, right? This is looking at the bottom, and this is from the top. But this placement's not marked anywhere on your platform bottom. You need to look at your plans to make sure that you get that right. Down here, it's kind of covering the assembly of everything. And these bolsters, they suggest you sand them like so. And then they're going to be in position. I'm going to sand them, because they're little, I'm going to glue them into position first and then sand them after the glue's dried. I think I'll have more stuff to hang on to. So let's take a look at that. Okay, so here's one of the assemblies put together here, the bolsters and all your cross trees and trestle trees and everything. And as you can see, it's drying, and I'm going to go ahead and sand these later. There is a bit of an order of operation to these. So we'll get our little parts out, line everything up like so. And I found that it's all I had to do, which this is fun too, because all you got to do is knock off the little high spots on the wood when you cut it out as far as sanding goes. Just get everything level. See that, like this little high spot and that little high spot, I just knocked it off. Not worrying about cleaning any of this up further, because we're going to go ahead and paint it all black. So here's what I do. I drop them together like this, and then I'll pull this out, and we'll put glue in here to make sure that we have the option to get it all straight and square. Whoop. This all worked fine when I wasn't doing it on camera before. That's what happens. Again, I strongly recommend not building a model in front of a camera. All right, get my finger here. Then clean up that excess glue. Doesn't need to be perfect, but because again, it's all getting painted black, but we don't want to leave funny looking marks. In real life, this I don't think it would have been glued. It would have been mortise and tenon like this to each other, and then probably pegged into position. Or maybe not even that. Maybe they would have just put it together like this and then put the base on top of it, and that would have held it down. Okay, then you have this little T-piece right here. So it's important that the little T-shaped piece goes in first before you put your bolsters on. That is not covered in the instructions. That's why I'm telling you. Like so. So now your bolsters, and I'm turning the burn side, charred side down, they go like this, and they overlap that T-piece just the tiniest bit and lock it in. But they do not pass over the trestle arm on the back here, okay? And drop our last one on. Okay, and then I'm going to move the camera here so I can see what I'm doing, and we'll get this cleaned up before the glue sets up. I know this I keep talking about this. A lot of folks, what they do on YouTube, I'm realizing, is they'll shoot with their iPhone, for example, or even just a different camera, a nicer camera. And what they do is they set it up like behind them, and they put a telephoto lens on and they zoom in so that the camera's out of the way and they can see what they're doing. I have a tendency to move my head a lot. I have a tendency to move the parts a lot. And so when I've tried that in the past, what ends up happening is you get a really good view of my head, or you get a really good view of my hands. So what I'm doing is I have a camera set up here with a macro lens on it that's about 3 inches away from this shot, so that you can see up close in detail what's going on here. So we'll go ahead and let this set up and dry, and then we've got the smaller one to cut out. This is the 2mm wood. Then you have one that's in 1.5 mil. That's the smaller one right here. We'll get it glued into position like this, and then we'll move on down to here. These are photo etch pieces that we've got going on. So let's go ahead and finish gluing this stuff up. I'm not going to demonstrate shaping this curve. You guys understand that, and we'll press on from here. Well, assembly has gone fine. We've gone ahead and put our trestles on the bottoms of our platforms. I've rounded these bollards over, so we've got our shape. And per the plans, these are in position forward and aft appropriately. So on step 225 right here, I got a little confused. I put it all together, but then it says right here, drill a 0.6mm hole through the timber from the holes in the photo etch. I'm really struggling to see the holes. I really was not sure what they're talking about. I think there's a hole right here. And I dug through all the plans, and basically what I concluded was they're talking about this hole right here that's slotted. And as you can see, I've drilled all the way through. I took a 0.6mm drill bit and I chucked it up and I ran it down through the top, straight through the middle. It's important that you go straight through the middle and you get these centered. These are 1mm wide boards, and you're drilling a 0.6mm hole, so there's 0.2 mil on either side of your hole right there. So yeah, it ends up tiny like that, and you just gotta do the best that you can right there to get it down the middle. So that's what I did. So we're gonna go ahead and let all this stuff set up for a little bit here, and I think I'm going to reference the plans next to try and pre-build a bunch of things, because on the next step here, 226, we start building up our masts. And then as you can see here, you're going to go ahead and put your platforms in place. So if we look at the plans, they cover things like, you know, this photo etch, the railing, these dead eyes that go in here, and then there's some pulleys that eventually we'll install as well. So I'd like to kind of pre-install all the hardware that I can on these pieces while it's easy now, right? Before we go ahead and fit everything into place. I think I'll hold off on, there's obviously that big railing right here, this piece. That looks like that's something that's fragile that I could knock off and break. It also looks like it's super easy to install after the fact. So I'd like to get the timbers and everything worked out here and fitting nicely so that, you know, they slide through here and into position exactly where we want it before I have to, you know, I'm reaching around like this trying to jam it on and off and I bang into this thing, right? So that's what we're going to do. I'll figure out that most of that hardware. These holes that are very, very cool, I'm trying to decide if I want to, I'll probably ream them out right now early on here, just to get everything through again, and then we'll paint it up lightly with black paint, and then we'll probably have to reaccomplish running our drill through there again to make sure that we still have our holes for the rigging that goes through there. So this is cool. These are building up into nice solid parts. The photo etch on these upper trestles here, it's thick, it's pretty robust, but be careful. You could still bend it. And I did want to make a quick comment here. So these are glued on. I glued them on with CA glue. You can't, I guess you could use wood glue. I don't know how well it would stick, but I just roughed up the surface of the photo etch and applied the CA glue and dropped these into position, let them set up, and it was no problem. They're on there nice and solid. That worked out really, really well. So we'll sort out some of this hardware and press on with the next parts. So moving along, like I mentioned, I went ahead and put in most of the little rings photo etch PE90 parts. So there's some other hardware, a couple of blocks that are going to get attached to this. I'm going to worry about that after it's been painted up and we're kind of ready to assemble things. So moving along past that, so you can see a lot of stuff here. We're at this step, page 66, step 226, and the instructions they want you to prepare your timbers, and it tells you right here you got to use the plans 8, 9, 10 to cut the masts and square everything off and get it the way that you want to go. It says here, I found that a paramagrit flat file to be very useful when it comes to squaring off your masts. So these are the instructions that we have right here, and let me change the battery here in the camera real quick so we can talk about this. All right, what we're looking at here is sheet 8. This is the foremast and yard plans, and I'm over here on the left-hand side where you have profiles, and it tells you start out with the 8mm dowel rod, cut it 207 millimeters long, and then up here you've got some profiles that they want you to work out. So I've gone ahead and done that mostly already, and I'm reticent to show you exactly how and what I did, because you're not all going to have access to this stuff. I did all this on a lathe that I have out in the shop. I have 2 lathes. I had a wood lathe, and I have a little small machine lathe. I'm assuming most of you don't have that unless you're really into this type of stuff, or you have a little machine shop or woodworking shop and you do those other types of things. You coincidentally can do this. If you don't have that, so for this main mast, for example, so here's kind of the idea, right? Is that you can put it on here and it matches up. It's 1-to-1 the shape that you have, right? What can you do if you don't have this? Especially when we get up here and we have to start tapering and doing all kinds of things to create this arrangement that we've got. Or sorry, that's the, yeah, this arrangement right here. And what do you do? Chuck it up in a drill and go ahead and get it spinning. It'll run the battery down eventually, and you can use sandpaper. That's what I used to use during the day. I'd get it chucked up in the drill, I grab my sandpaper, and I just start working it. You can also just go ahead and use a sharp hobby knife and very carefully whittle away most of it, come back with a file. These small files are super, super helpful and effective on the wood, and just start working your profile in. And then when you're done, you'll have something hopefully that closely matches what's here on the table. Now I haven't done everything yet. I need to drill some holes for some pins and things like that. But I did run into what I guess I would call your typical problems. So for example, on this lower mast, it says at the top you're supposed to have a 5mm by 3mm high circle. And then underneath that, it should be square at 5mm by 5mm. Well, and then down here you put your cheeks on here. So it's very important that you establish kind of a flat plane and then have that plane continue on up. I also had trouble, I turned this down to 5mm, but then I'm not able to have a 5mm by 5mm square piece right here. It ends up being smaller than that. And then this, I got to do some fitting. It actually is supposed to go through here, and it doesn't want to go through right now at the moment, and I'm not going to force it. I need to trim something here, but once it does go through, I could tell, just by looking here, we've got some gaps, right? It's not going to be snug. See how there's that space around there? That means that this squared section isn't large enough. So all you have to do once is actually, you're really better off going beyond and cleaning this up and getting it flush and as flat as you can. Get some scrap pieces of timber out, the flat pieces of scrap that you got, and you just glue it on here. And now you've got your square. You can resize that square to the size and dimension that it needs to be. When these ships were made originally, this may have been, they may have been able to find a trunk of a tree that was long enough and straight enough to make this out of one piece, but definitely out of the larger mass, there were several pieces of timber that they lashed together, kind of like you see here with the lashing that's going on, to get this shape. So, I know I'm not doing a lot of demonstrating here. I'm not interested in like whittling away on camera and showing you how I just whittled and turned with a lathe to get these shapes that you see right here. And this is another example down here at the bottom. This piece on the on our 4 top masts, it's supposed to be 5 millimeters round here at the bottom, and then 5 millimeter by 5 millimeter square underneath. So I'm gonna have to figure out how this piece is gonna fit into the next section of rigging moving up. It's actually going to sit, let's see here, I think it's going to sit right here. I gotta double check all, yeah, it's going to sit right here. I think I got to make sure that it goes through our parts and everything fits the way that it's supposed to. So that's really what this whole section of the build here is about, is getting these plans out, and then we'll work on putting all these parts together and working up our mass. I know that's not super helpful, but you really just kind of got to figure out how to get your shapes established, your profiles established, and then just work sensibly through and carefully through lining everything up and keeping it straight so that you get some functional pieces. So let me press on with this foremast and see where we end up. Alright, so here's what a little bit of what I was talking about before. So I went ahead and pulled out some, I guess this is basswood. I'm not sure. It's the anyway, it's a soft wood that was in the kit, and it's 5 millimeters wide. And I went ahead and re-secured it on here and sanded it down to get the shape, and did the best I could to absolutely plumb it up with what is going to be the front of what is this, our mizzen mast? No, our foremast. And so anyway, here's your platform, right? And now it fits nice and snug, and we can go ahead and set it down, get our spacing right here, and then you can take a look at it and start monkeying around with, is it plumb? Is it straight? Do we like the way it looks? And this all gets painted black, so it's fine. Then we have this block that goes on top right here, and I'm going to be able to monkey with getting it plumb and square also. I did have, so see here, this is supposed to be a 5 millimeter round hole, or sorry, post top, and it's a little bit, or 3 mil, 5 mil. It's a little bit shy. I've got some play in here, but that's okay. I can go ahead and put some little bits of wood in here to trim it up, right? Or just fill it up with glue and some CA glue and get it exactly how we want. So there's a few options there. So my point is, this is turning out nicely. I'm happy with this. There's some fittings that go on here after you slide this into position. But my point is, don't feel like because you've removed too much wood accidentally that you've inadvertently caused a big problem. You can recover from it, and in a lot of cases, I think make it better. I did a better job with this than I did carving it out. The only drawback would be in the future, if this was on a ship that this was not painted, in this section, make sure you use matching color wood and things like that. matching types of wood so that everything looks uniform when you finish it. All right. Okay, pressing on. Okay, we're back. If you hear laughing, it's because I made Nora laugh in the background. But anyway, so I've gone ahead and put all the regular fixings here on the foremast, the base and everything, and it looks nice. It's coming along, right? So then we're moving up to the fore topmast. Now, when I did this on the lathe, I made everything round and following the profile. Now, up here at the top, this top piece, this top 3 mils is supposed to be round. The rest is supposed to be square. And I haven't addressed that yet. I'm going to do that shortly. But I thought I would wait by starting off with the bottom here, which I did square off a little bit. And then I went ahead and further squared it off with our blocks to match. And I want to get this part done first, squared up and ready to be installed so that it establishes a face, right? This flat face for my flat square up at the top. We want all these to correspond. All right, so they're supposed to be 5 millimeter by 5 millimeter per the instructions. So start off with that. Then move this up here. It's going to slot down into this square right here. Now I noticed earlier I was having some trouble, and maybe you could see it looking carefully right there. This is not actually square. It is 5 millimeters across, but when I mic'd it out, it ended up 4.5 millimeters forward to aft. So I had to go ahead and I changed my size here of my little piece so that that's what we got. So that it will drop down in here. And then once this is set, I've got my sizing correct. There's a hole that I'm going to drill through here, and I'm going to add the fid. A fid is just a crossed piece. It's just a piece of lumber to stop this thing from continuing to drop down. Right, keep dropping down. It just will sit up on top of here, right in that spot. I'll show that in a minute. And then we want these to be level here at the top. This one's round and this is round, so that you can take your part 64 here. I don't know the name of it. Let me see if my little cheat sheet says the name. No, it doesn't say the name, but it sits on here like so. And then this is round to correspond with the holes here, and then you get your spacing right. Well, you can't drop it down on the top because you've got this flared out piece for the next part up, and it doesn't fit coming up the bottom because this is square. But if you look at the instructions, they want you to round these corners off so that you can in fact bring this up. So what I'm going to do is mark, and this is, let me show you here. It's right here. It says 5 by 5 and it's squared, but the corners are rounded off. And then it transitions up here to just a round circle. So I'm going to go ahead and very carefully, I'm going to mark the front and back of this so that I'm happy with the way the mast goes. And very carefully remove the corners just enough so that it will slide through the hole that we've got here on our connecting piece. And then we'll be situated in such a way where you can drop this in, put the fid in. You got to drill the hole for the fid. We'll drop this down in, the fid will go in, and then your mast is in position. And once I'm happy with the fid hole and the shape of this piece, then I'll come up to the top of the foremast or foretopmast, sorry, and I will plane this down, and we'll get this squared off up here as well to match what's going on down at the bottom. Hopefully that makes sense. This is kind of hard to demonstrate unless you're building it, and I don't want to bore you with all of the details. I want to show you cool stuff like this that looks neat before we paint it all black and everything. But if you are doing this, or you're wondering about this stuff, or you're looking at the instructions, hopefully these little pieces of information, they should make sense to you with what we're trying to do. All right, pressing on. All right, I have marked F on the front here of this. I've drilled my little hole for the fid, and this just squeezes in here nicely and and clears, and we're good to go almost. So we've got this hole right here, the square right there in the top, which is where I presume the bottom of this foretop mast is supposed to go, because that's where I fit it for, and it drops in here nicely. The problem is it's too far forward. The holes for this thing don't line up. If I force the issue, then my mast leans back, which I've seen before, but that is not what is supposed to happen. In fact, I've checked the plans. I'm just going to cut straight to it. They should be straight up and down like this. They should be parallel and nice and close together. So I thought, well, you know, there's this cross beam in here that I did not put in the wrong place because it is keyed. It has to go there. Then I thought, well, then I did something wrong here. Well, when I check all my plans and my alignment, everything checks out here. So for some reason, something doesn't work right. And I thought there's two solutions. I can either take this as just a 3mm piece of wood. There's plenty of it. I could drill 2 5mm holes and make another one with the holes spaced out further apart. The problem with that is then this spacing, right, is further apart. I'm exaggerating here than it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be pretty much like how this piece has them spaced apart. So those are the two options. Either, well, move this out, or the other thing I can do is cut a notch in the back of this part of the mast so that it will drop down. And it's funny, you do need the fid, because see, as you can see here, see that hole? Without the fid, this just kind of keeps going down, and that's no good. You want it to be tight. So I'm going to cut a slot on the back side of this mast so that it will fit down into our little square right there like it's supposed to, so it doesn't sit on top of it right here. And that's just going to have to do. I don't really know what went wrong, if really even anything. I guess I could actually, I have a file. I could probably actually work this. I could work this back and thin out this little beam right here that's connecting, and that might work. So regardless, I'm going to do one of the two. I'll thin that out, and I'll take something off the back of this, or a little bit of both, so that, anyway, these then fit correctly. So we get our spacing that we want. They should be about like that, parallel, and everything should be nice and straight and up and down. So that's kind of this whole process, is just move along slowly here and figure this stuff out. The hole, by the way, gets put in, and then the fid gets installed last, right as you drop this down, because you need to have this piece in position first, otherwise it all doesn't work. So yeah, that's what I'm getting at. That's where I'm at. I just wanted to point that out. And like I said, just keep working methodically through this stuff, and then you just kind of repeat it again to go up the masts even further to get your third part done. All right, pressing on. Well, we are returning now with a little bit of an update here. I've gone ahead and assembled all the major components of our foremast for you to see. And it's a pretty tall deal, even though it's not, you know, the main mast. So if we zoom in here, we're just going to take a look at, I guess, what you would just expect to see anyway out of the ship instructions. So everything's here except for any of the rigging. We haven't put any of the block and tackle in. We haven't put any of the dead eyes in and everything. The futtock shrouds, those aren't installed. But we've got all of our main hardware. This is the bottom of the platform. It's all here. And as we pan up, this platform is photo etch and brass there, and wood, sorry, and then just kind of a repeat, and then on your way up you go to the top of the mast. Up here in the front, can you see that? There's a hole drilled right there. See that? and that is forward and aft. So be perpendicular to everything else. So yeah, that's it. So the next thing to do is to go ahead and and this is the part that looks cool, well, I've already gone ahead and sealed this. This all has a coat of varnish on it, just like we've been putting on everything else. This section of the mast primarily, and then moving up and then a little bit towards the top, they get painted black, which is great. You can kind of cover up any of your boo-boos that you've made or may have made. So I want to go ahead and work on the next mast. The main mast, I have all the parts already pre-cut out right here. I've got my stuff ready to go out to the shop so I could turn them on the lathe. Let's see here. I was going to mention, this really paid off. I said I was going to leave this standoff right back here until I was done putting everything together. It went together extremely easily. 4 pieces of photo etch, you drop them in, you drop the rail in on top, and you're done. I mean, it's that there's those 5 pieces. It was simple. So I guess my only comments are just kind of reiterating maybe the obvious and what the kit says. Get this stuff straight as you possibly can. Definitely, if it leans back a little bit, right? If it's canted back a little, that's totally fine as long as it all kind of like makes sense, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. But then when you look at it from head on, move this here so we get the right background. Make sure that it's straight, right? You don't want it wobbling this way and that way. And I achieved this rather easily using wood glue and just setting it into position and letting it set up. And then when it was pretty close, I dumped a little bit of CA glue in to just kind of hold it a little firmer in a position. Double check that I was happy, relatively speaking, with the angle of everything, and then let it dry and put CA glue in to reinforce it. And it's actually a pretty robust structure. So what I want to do now is the next step would be to mask off the areas we don't want painted, and then spray paint black. You could brush paint, but I'm going to spray paint black these areas here. But I'd like to wait until I have all 3 masks ready for that point. So I'm going to go ahead and for now, at this point in the video, press on with getting the main mast assembled. And that prep work's all kind of been the same. This is our main mast platform. I was a little confused. There's 4 holes here for 4 photo etch part 90 rings, but then in the instructions it clearly shows you only putting 2 in. And I went ahead and looked ahead as far as I can, and I can't see anything contrary to that. On the bottom there's none. I'm going to double check my instructions again. Actually, it's probably like quadruple checked. But this one just has a different arrangement. Otherwise, it's the same. And lessons learned previously, I went ahead and measured like this square, for example. It is actually square, but instead of being 5 by 5, it's like 4.85 by 4.85. It's close. So these are all, size everything per the plans, and then choose to make fit, what you're going to modify to make it fit, either the mast or you're going to open up this hole, right? Things like that. So I'll go ahead, like I said, here's the other one, the smaller one for the back, and we'll go ahead and turn these on the lathe and kind of rinse and repeat here, and we'll press on from there. All right, folks, while working on the main mast, which I'm basically repeating everything I did before, I thought I'd share basically a change in order of operations here. So when you look at the drawings, it will tell you that on the main mast you basically have at the top an area 3 millimeters deep that is 5 millimeters round, and then you have a square 5 millimeter section, and then you'll carve these cheeks in later. That's depicted here. This is where we're looking at on plan sheet 9, which you'll get if you buy the kit. But this is what we're getting at. We'll put these cheeks in later, but I took it out to the lathe and I turned a 5 millimeter top, and then this is supposed to be square 5 millimeters. And like I said before, when I don't know what happened, but basically, well, actually I do know what happened. If you turn a 5 millimeter top and you run that 5 millimeters all the way down round, when you go to square it, there's not enough material left. So what I did this time instead was, out in the shop, I turned this end down to 5 mil, and then I turned, because this is an 8 millimeter dowel rod, I turned this somewhere down to 6.5 millimeters, right? Then I came back inside, and we have this little clever setup that you see right here, which is just a clamp, right? And then I have a chisel, a very, very, very sharp chisel, that I carefully laid on here and worked back to square off my edges. And now I have, it's actually a little bit less than that, what I want, 4.87, we're close. We're right at the 5, 4.99. We're right at having our 5 millimeter square, which is a good starting point for fitting through here on our mast top here, but it's a little snug, and that's okay because we're going to clean this out. This is actually less than 5 millimeters. But I really wanted to get this shape. I thought there's got to be a way to do this without having to add the wood back in like I did. And that turned out to be the secret that worked. This is the original 8 mil. This is turned to 5 mil. I left like 6.5, 7 mil here. And you can see that we've got a little edge right up there, so this corner doesn't go all the way out, and it worked. And then I have this, just a little regular little mini machine lathe. You absolutely want to get these things square. All the sides have to be squared up to one another. And then this will establish, I could pick a front and back and then put my cheeks on parallel to these lines. So anyway, that's the setup that I used for those of you who are interested. Get yourself a chisel, make sure it's super sharp, go nice and slow, make sure you work it flat, and that is another way to go ahead and square that up. All right, pressing on. All right, so we have, I'm moving along, we have our main mast here. This is the lower part, and then moving up to the main top mast. This piece has been prepared, and just like I showed before, I ran into a little trouble, and I just wanted to show you down here. When I squared off the bottom, I took off too much material. It just didn't work out. So I just went ahead and built basically a little box around the end to bring us back out to the right dimensions. And if you run into the same trouble, that's all you'll have to do too. And then we've also installed the FID that goes through here and stops it from plunging down too far into the top stand here, the stand for the top of the mast. So this is our little part that connects it here, and I just wanted to show that the whole thing, kind of just mark your front, it drops in here, and then you put your little piece in like this, and then you're set. That's all we're doing. And then we have to glue it to get it all straight. All right, welcome back to, let's see here, the mizzen mast, right? So what I wanted to point out here on the instruction manual is there's a serious rake to this mast. If you look at part 174, it appears that the top tips quite a bit down right here, the stand that you would sit on. So we've got that piece all set and ready to go. We've got a little bit of our few of our photo etch pieces installed, the little rings, and pre-drilled out some of the holes through there just to make things easier, and got everything ready to go. We've pre-done our masts so that they're glued up and set, and we've got them, with our little taper and everything in them. So the big thing is, if you don't know, with these instructions, they're 1-to-1, so you can lay your part directly on top and make sure that you've got an identical matching piece. So what we're going to do now is take this top to the mizzen mast, and we'll drop it down and glue it into position. As you can see, there's quite a bit of an angle right there where it tips forward. So let's go ahead and get some glue on here and set this thing up. Alright, you could use some CA glue just to expedite this whole little process here, but I try to stick with wood glue as my primary agent for affixing all of these things. We could put some more here on the sides. This is a really encapsulated mizzen mast right here. I guess this part's really got a lot of glue surface available. We'll drop that in and tip it forward here. So I'm looking to make sure that on the bottom these cheeks line up with the supports for the stand, and then I'm looking here, I'm going to tip it, I'm looking for vertical, right? We want it to be all kind of square here as much as possible, and if something's got to float a little bit for that to happen, that's fine. We just want to make sure that we're as square as we possibly could be. We've got the right angle, and then I just kind of come back, clean up this glue. All of this is going to get painted black, so it doesn't really matter, but we want to try and keep things clean. And then what you can do is you could drop some CA glue in the back side here and up on the front right there if you feel like you need to hurry up and get this thing set up and dried. That looks good. I think I'm happy with that. So we're going to let that set up and glue in position. Then the next thing, we have this piece 66. It's going to go on top. It's got a piece of photo etch on the back. It'll drop down on here like this, and it also tips at an angle. So we want to try and get the platform and this parallel to one another. And you drop the top of the mizzen mast into place. It goes down right here. And before we do that, I'm going to set this down to dry. I've gone ahead and there's a hole that gets drilled in at the top. This goes fore and aft, so 90 degrees perpendicular to it. At the bottom you've got a hole, and that is for your fib. This ring, this little guy, has to go on first before you put the fib into place, otherwise it'll never get in there because it doesn't fit. Oh, in this case it does fit over the top. How about that? I was wrong. On the previous mast you couldn't drop this down over the top, it wouldn't work. But you want to get your fib cut out and ready to go, and we'll glue that part in next. Okay, I think we're prepped and ready to go here. So I've installed our little fib, that's that little cross piece, and made sure everything fits. So the big deal, it's real simple. It just drops on like this, right? And then down into here, and the fib stops it, and then this piece gets glued at a corresponding angle, and you're good to go. What you have to do is make sure that you get your front to back right, and that the hole that we placed in here, see that it is perfectly front to back as well. And so what I like to do is put a whole bunch of glue up on here, and then a bit of glue down where our fib rests to try to encourage the top of the mizzen mast to stick a little bit. And I'll leave this part loose on our mizzen mast top here, because what that will allow me to do is I can come back, it gives me an opportunity to manipulate and move it basically. So we're going to drop that like so, tip it forward. Hope you can see that in the camera there. And then we got to worry about, from the front, you got to worry about left to right, that this thing isn't all crooked every which way. And that's really all there is to it. And then we got to get it to set up and clean up all of our excess glue. Even though, once again, this all gets painted black, we want it to look nice. So yeah, that's kind of it. And that's all I did on the other two masts. That's why there wasn't a lot to show here on this. But we're going to go ahead and check front to back like this. Check it sideways. And it does lean back a substantial amount. I'll show you a drawing with that, and we'll talk about the angle of the masts in a minute. Alright, so let's let that all set up. Press it on. Alright, the last thing we're going to do is put the basically the support back up here, I guess the railing in place. So what we've done is prepared our pieces of photo etch. They just drop into these 3 holes right here. And really the key with them is start with 1, okay? And they do tip. Let's see if I can get the camera here so you guys can see this. They tip forward with the stand, so they should lean forward also. So get the first one in place, turn it sideways, make sure we're happy with it, leaning left to right, and you're set. Now all the rest just have to match that. There's our middle one. Push it all the way down. So this one needs to go forward a little bit, and it needs to be turned a little bit. Another option is you could drop it in here, put the rail on top of here, and then just put CA glue at the bottom. That's another option because it fits really snug. But this so far has been really good, worked out really well for me. If you keep enough glue on here. Let's see. Alright, so you're going for, I hope we can see that, something like that, right? Pretty straight. And then I prepared the railing, just kind of eyeball its position left to right. Let's see here. It's a lot easier to do when you're not trying to do it in front of the camera. Just gently push it down to either side. There we go. And it's like that. And you're good, and it's leaning, has the same rake as the platform does. You're set. And so now I would just put a little bit of CA glue along this edge right here and set it up, and you're ready to go. Okay, so we now have all the main components of our 3 masts complete. This is one of those things where I've set these down on the table here. This is one of those times where these mats are kind of helpful because you can start with a center line down at the bottom here, and then you can look up and see how straight you've gotten things when you're laying stuff out and how square. One of the reasons for these mats. But anyway, this all has turned out very nicely. I'm super pleased and happy with what we've done here. And like I said, this is just all of the main components and shaping done. What has to happen next is they need to be painted, mashed off and painted. Now I have all of these have been treated with a clear coat of varnish. You can kind of make it out here, and the paint's going to stick to that better. So if we look at the instructions on page 67, it shows basically how they're mashed off and painted. Now you can see here we have roping installed, we have our blocks and tackle installed. I'm going to do all that after this next part, right? I want to mask these off, and I'm just going to use an airbrush and paint these. So we'll do that. I'm not going to worry about the rigging and all that stuff yet, and we're going to worry about the bowsprit, which is the last piece, in the next episode. I think it's time to wrap this up. Let's get these painted and put them up on the ship and take a look at things. All right, pressing on. All right, welcome back. So here are the masts stuck into the hull of the ship. This is just temporary. It's not permanent, but like I said, this was what I would do. So let's turn the ship here a little bit like this, and let's lower our camera a little bit like this, so we're basically looking at it straight on from the side. And what you'll notice is the foremast seems to be pretty much straight up and down. This one fits the loosest, by the way. Just that's my fault. I had to do a little sanding and probably went a little too far. The main mast has a slight rake, tips back. And then our mizzen mast comes back quite dramatically the most. All of this is correct per the plans. If you take a good look at them, they show you that this angle is in there. The mizzen mast, this is why you have the platform tipped forward at such an angle when assembling, it's all ends up being level all the way across, which is really, really sharp. So I'm super happy with this. They also, if we do this right here, are pretty much straight in a row, which is important. We want them up and down and looking like they're supposed to. So yeah, this is a really neat detail here. You can see some of my dirty shop ceiling, but it's looking good. This is what we want. Now we have to finish up. So like I put the little bits and things like that on the main or the foremast, and we've got our photo etch parts ready to go up here. But we do need to do a bunch of rigging. So in the next episode, I'll take these off. I mean, this one comes right out, and we'll go ahead and rig up our dead eyes and such, and we'll finish up with the bowsprit, which is going to be installed right here up front, and we'll get those initial parts ready to go, and we'll probably, I'm a little reticent to do this, but the instructions tell you they want you to go ahead and fix these into position, and we'll end up adding our yard arms later, but you fix these into position initially, and we'll do our initial rigging on the hull with the mast here to keep everything in place. So that's it for now. We'll spin around here, take a look at it. On the starboard side, it's kind of hard to get everything in to view, especially with this lens, but there goes the mast all the way up to the top, and they change everything about this ship. It just really, there's a whole nother dimension here to look at, which is really sharp. So anyway, that's it. I hope this episode made sense. There's not a lot of pieces of wood here, not a lot of parts to put together, but there's some little gotchas, and hopefully that translated through the video and made sense of what we're trying to do. And if you're watching this for help, because you're building this ship, John, then hopefully some of this stuff made sense and will help you out as well. So that's it. Thank you all very much for watching. I appreciate it. Thank you to everyone who's gone to Midwest Model Shop and made a purchase there. We do appreciate all of your support, and thank you to everyone who's been supporting us here on Patreon. It does mean a lot. All right, we'll see you in the next one.